Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. I'm Nancy McNally of NancyMcNallyQuilts.com. So our next single quilt block is going to be Stargazer. Now the original block has, it's pieced slightly different, so I tweaked it a little bit, added, let's just say, added a couple more seams, if you will, to make it easier for everyone to piece. I'm going to show you a second method, an alternate method on piecing flying geese. So wait till you watch that method and then try it on scrap fabric if you've never tried that method before. And it's the no waste. Actually, the traditional method and the method that's called no waste flying geese, you don't waste any fabric. I promise you, the math is the exact same. Okay, so now, before you cut any fabric, I want you to use a spray starch. Prepare your fabric first with spray starch. The pattern has the word bias in red to warn you right then and there, go prepare it with spray starch. All right? I can't stress that enough. If you cut your fabric and then spray it with spray starch, it shrinks the shape. It shrinks it. It doesn't shrink it evenly either, just to let you know. It does not do it on both the straight of grain and the cross grain. It just shrinks it. And then your block, your unit, whatever you're working on, will not be the correct size. So we are going to be working with flying geese. That's our main skill today, is we're going to learn to take the fear out of working with bias triangles. And if you're still afraid, then I'm going to show you the second method. All right, so hang in there. Go grab your pattern, something to write with so you can take notes. All right, it's time for me to get set up and we'll get started. All right, so we're going to do 2 at a time half square triangles. And again, if you already know how to do this method, then fast forward to the next section. So you're going to go right sides together with your B fabrics. So I've got my light B on top. Okay, all right, so we're going to draw the diagonal line. I do give you wiggle room with the half square triangles. So let's get started on our regular 2 at a time half square triangles. So I drew the diagonal line. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on either side, and then I'm going to cut apart on the diagonal line. So let's do that quickly, and then I'll show you the other method that I use. I sewed on that side, rotate it, now sew on this side. Then you take the half square triangle and you trim it, or you cut it in half. And then we're going to press and we'll trim them to size, okay? I'm going to put these over here. Now, for those of you who have not seen the method that I use, I'm going to take my B squares, right sides together, edge to edge, match them up. Instead of drawing the line, I just go ahead and cut it apart. And I can tell it is time to change my blade. And now we just sew these. Okay, make sure you make 8 of these half square triangles. Don't forget to press and trim them to size. Now let's get set up for our next step. I've trimmed my half square triangles to size, and now it's time to make the corner units. And we need to make 4 corner units. Easy peasy. So you're going to need your A squares, and you've got your half square triangles trimmed to size. We're going to lay them out. All right, we're going to go right sides together, just like you've done with everything else. And you're going to sew your 1/4 inch seam, and I chain piece these. Next, I'm just going to finger press them, even though the iron's right here. I'm going to finger press them to where the seam allowance goes towards the A square. Nest those seam allowances. Nest those seam allowances. Okay, there we go. All right, I have my seams nested. Let's get this seam together, or sewn. And there you go. And there you go. And now it lays flat. If you, or when you press, and you press from the back, please always flip over your block, your unit, and press it from the front to make sure that Nothing is messed up on the front. All right, now it's time to set up for our star points. So what we're going to be doing are these units right here. Now when you look at your pattern, you'll see there's a seam line right there. So that's what I did different in this pattern, because otherwise you would be piecing this flying geese unit with this triangle, and this triangle, and then adding this large triangle, the large red, to either side of this center unit right here. So we're going to need our E rectangles and our G squares. Draw a diagonal line, one diagonal line on the back side of each of the G squares. Now we're going to separate. We're going to have 4 of the E rectangles in one pile and 4 in the other pile. So we have a left and a right. You're also going to do the same thing with your G squares. 4 for the left and 4 for the right. I'm using my open toe foot today to do the stitch and flip so that nothing impedes my view of seeing where I need to start sewing. Begin with a leader. Just stitch on the leader. It doesn't matter. This is a piece of scrap fabric to not necessarily to keep, but to toss. Some people do it where they're going to keep that, but I'm not keeping these. So I'm just going to sew almost to the end. Going to go right sides together. Get this one sewn. So what does the leader prevent? It prevents the sewing machine needle from pushing your fabric, the corner of your fabrics that you're trying to join together, this corner. It prevents the needle from pushing it down into the hole of the needle plate where the needle goes down into, and then it just makes a hot mess. All right, so now that we have sewn our stitch and flip units together, our next step is just to trim them apart, and that is really easy. All right, so we're going to get these trimmed off, and if you've never done this before, again, it's very simple. I'm pretty certain I've already showed it. I take a ruler. I always use my rotary cutter. You can use scissors. I always use my rotary cutter. I take the 1/4 inch line from my ruler and lay it on that stitched line, and then I trim away the extra. You're going to repeat that process on all of them. So this is the right one. So I'm going to show you. Okay. Get that out of the way. So you see how I pressed it and everything is nice. So you're going to repeat that process. Trim the excess off of each one. Trim that off. Throw that in the trash. If they're larger, I make 1/4 score triangles out of those. And there we go. So see how these are going in opposite directions so that we get that angled seam. All right, I'm going to finish trimming these and getting them pressed, and then we are going to move on to the next page in the pattern, which is making the flying geese, and that is when I'm going to show you how to use the alternate method. I hope before you cut the squares into triangles that you prepared your fabric with spray starch first. Let's get started on our half square, our flying geese. I almost said the wrong thing. So I have our white or light, whatever color you're using, C squares. For our C's, you cut on both diagonals and we get the 4 triangles. Okay. For our H, you cut on one diagonal and you get 2. Now, in the pattern, so we're going to take one of our white C triangles and one of our H. Now watch how easy this is. You're going to line them up just like this. Okay, that's how it's going to look when it's done. But here's how you go and you sew them. You're going to take your triangle. Here's your H. You're going to go right sides together. Align these 2 corners down here. These 2 corners right here. Look up here. this piece will extend past. It's supposed to. Don't trim it right now, just leave it. All right, now we're going to sew this. And then you flip and you press it in place. It looks like that. So you'll have this little piece hanging off here and a little piece hanging off there. All right, so now you have to press it before you join the next one. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to go right sides together and you're going to line up those two corners in the bottom. And then we're going to sew. Okay, so we're going to get really close here. So what I want you to look at is right here. I'm hoping I get this in camera. Right here. My stitches came along here, and as they come off of this triangle, they land in this intersection right here. That's how you know that everything is going to line up correctly. You did your 1/4 inch seam. All right, so let's flip and press in place. Before trimming, make sure between here, which is the tip of the light triangle of the center of the unit, from here to here is a 1/4 inch. If it is, you are good to go, and you can take and you can use a ruler if you need to help so that you don't trim the wrong thing off, but you do want to trim these out of the way. And there you go. So you're going to make 4 of the green ones, or whatever color you've chosen. And then you're going to make 4 red ones. So I'm going to do those in just a moment. So I'm going to put these aside. If I can pick them up. There we go. And then we're going to show you the alternate method. There's also the blue ones that you're going to make. And so here's my blue ones. Of course, I left one. There we go. So there's my blue ones. And I'll get all those done in a moment. So let's focus on the alternate method. So I'm going to get set up for this, and I'll be right back. Let's do the no waste method. So before you cut your fabrics for making the flying geese, let's watch this method and see if you like this method. So you can watch me, and if you want to go grab some scrap fabric, pause the video and go grab some scraps. And you will need to cut a light background at 4 1/4. Do not cut it on both diagonals like the pattern reads. Do not do that. And then your smaller triangles, which in the pattern are the red, blue, and the, excuse me, red, blue, and green, or green, blue, and red, they are 2 3/8 inch squares. So go get those if you want to do it with me, if you've never done it before. All right. Now, here's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to draw a diagonal line on the back side of your H squares, which are your colors. You're going to line them up like this. Let's just move everything so that you can see it and nothing is in your way. Okay. We're going to take our first one, go right sides together, and align it in that corner right there. So for me, that's the furthest corner away from me. Now, you're going to line this one. You're going to try to keep those diagonal lines lined up, and you're going to line this one in the bottom corner. You will be sewing directly over where these two overlap each other. It works. Whoever came up with this method, love it. All right, so I am going to place a pin in both of these to keep them aligned, because now I got to move it from my cutting mat to my sewing machine, and I'm picking up 3 pieces of fabric. So now we're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. Now here's what I wanted to tell you. Anytime you are working with a pattern that has flying geese in it, go read the pattern. The designer actually wants you to read the pattern. Get familiar with what's going on so you'll know what to prepare for. Now, the flying geese, if it does the method that I have in the pattern instructions where I have you cut on both diagonals, circle that in the pattern and circle that number, because that's the number that you're going to need to make your background or whatever color the larger triangle is of the flying geese. And the larger triangle is the one that is in the center. Okay? So that one will be the larger number, and it's generally an odd number, like, well, 4¼ is not large, but, or it's not odd. But it will always tell you to cut on both diagonals to do this. So make that mental note. Oh, I'm making flying geese. Oh, I got to cut on both, diagonals. And then if it tells you to cut squares on one diagonal, and they're going to be the wings of the flying geese, then you'll know not to cut those and keep them like this and draw a diagonal line on it. And this is how you're going to pull it together. It's very easy. Now we're going to sew 1/4 inch seam on either side, both sides of the drawn line. And by the way, this no waste method makes 4 flying geese. All right, let's get these sewn. Okay, so I have this one sewn. Now I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam away from that drawn line. Now remember, when you're sewing that first seam, watch to make sure that nothing makes where the two squares overlap each other. Make sure nothing pulls that backwards, okay? Make sure it stays flat. Now we're going to cut apart on that drawn line. Make sure my iron is on. Yep. Now, we have these 2 units. I'm going to flip these in place, and they're going to kind of look like hearts. Okay, there's one. Let's do this one. And there's the second one, but we're not done. Okay, so you have 2 squares left over because we only used 2 in the beginning. Do you see where we're at now? Now, take one, align it in this bottom corner down here. Line these raw edges up, these cut edges, align them, and your diagonal line that you drew will come to the corner and will extend past where we've sewn over here, where these 2, like, part of the hearts are. And yes, I'm going to put a pin in it to hold it in place. You do not have to. I just prefer to keep it aligned. Now we're going to do the same thing with this one. And what are we going to do? We're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of the drawn line, and then we're going to cut it apart. Okay, place a pin in it. I tell you, whoever made this method or whoever figured this out is brilliant. All right, that's what it looks like. Now, we're going to cut them apart. We're going to cut them apart on that drawn line. Now it's time to press. So we're going to open these up and look. Is that not clever? And there you go. Look, I have 4 flying geese from the no waste method, which you just remember. You just take the original measurement that is in the pattern, whatever pattern you're using, if you like this method, and you just don't cut the squares on the diagonal and on one diagonal. So make note of that. All right, there you go. All right, let's get set up for the next step. So before we finish making our quilt block, we need to do our center first, and we're going to make a variable star block. So you're going to need your F center square. Now I used, remember that print in the other blocks, for those of you that have seen the previous blocks, where I fussy cut using this fabric. I did the same thing for this one. And, excuse me, and now I'm looking at this going, I wish I would have used the pin dot. It's almost, well, it is a polka dotted fabric for these instead of the fabric with the words on it. But that's okay. If I want to change it, I can change it later. I can make another blocks. Not a big deal. So what we're going to do is we are going to take the remainder of our A squares and our blue flying geese units. Now before we put this together, I need to make sure that you understand something with these red flying geese and the red stitch and flip units. You need to keep these the same color. If you switch them out when we join them together, you've now broken up that star point, because these two come together to make a large star point. So I also chose a blender fabric so that I wouldn't be piecing 2 prints together, even though it would be like the same print here of the same fabric. But to pull these together, it might play with the eye a little bit, so that's why I used blenders on those. All right, so we're going to pull these together. You know how to do this. This is very easy. These 2 flying geese will join to the center, and you'll make a top row and a bottom row. And the top row will join to the center, and the bottom row will join to the center. All right, I'm going to get this made, and then we're going to move on to joining this. Now our corner units are done. So once we get these pieced, we're going to piece these, and then we will add these. Notice I have my left and my rights set up. Everything is ready to go as it needs to be. But first, let's get these done. All right, I'll meet you back here in a moment. As you can see, I've almost got it all together. So let's quickly review before I sew this bottom row onto the star block. All right, so remember, I told you we're going to join the outer flying geese, which is supposed to be green, and mine is both colors. It's just the way the fabric was. So you're going to sew the green to the red flying geese, and then the left and right stitch and flip units go to either side, and then your corners. Make sure that your corners are going in the correct direction, because it's easy to get those flipped. So lay it out first and then join. Don't forget to join this to this. So the side star points do not have the corner units, just to make sure that you don't get confused, because I've done that before. I'm like, what? Okay, all right. Sometimes I'm too tired and, I get things confused. I'm just like everybody else. So you're going to sew your side star points to your center. I like the way this turned out. This is super cute. It's not totally and completely in the center, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. So once you sew your stitch and flip units to the flying geese units, you should have a straight diagonal, that's good, a diagonal line, and they should just come together so nicely. Now, if they don't, the seams in here are kind of bulky, so just flip the unit over to the back and look, oh, did it mess up here? Did it, get misaligned? If that's all it is, pop just a few stitches out on either side where that intersection is, realign it with your fingers, and place pins in it so that it'll hold together and it won't move. And just resew that tiny little section. Okay, let's get this one joined. So our block is done. You're going to, like I said before, many times I've told you, you're going to nest the center seams first. You have to nest them. I know some people like, I hate doing that. Especially the pins. They don't like the pins. All right, so I'm going to put a pin there. I'm going to place a pin in this one. Now, because we've spray starched and stabilized basically our flying geese units, our bias triangles, your fabric may not want to give as much. It's basically stiff, and we're trying to join it to these other pieces. So go ahead and line everything and pin them. So if you get like a little, this piece, let's see if I can separate it. This piece right here, if it kind of like wants to bubble away, like kind of wave away, your feed dogs will what am I trying to say? They will fit it in there. So what I like to do is pull it up with my fingers and align these edges right here and place a pin in it. And I'm telling you, if you've still got like a little tiny bit of excess, the feed dogs will fill that in. It'll pull it all together. All right, so let me get some pins in here. I'm going to line up this one right here. There isn't a seam here. It's only this one right here. So I'm going to go line this one up and then I'll do the corners. Okay, let's get this corner right here. Sorry if the hands are getting in the way. And this one. All right, let's get this one sewn. Remember, don't sew over your pins. All right, I get to look first. I gotta make sure. I think it looks fantastic. I just need to give it a good press. And there you go. I love it. I'm going to keep it like it is. I was going to trade out this fabric and make another one, but I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Thank you for joining me today and making the Stargazer quilt block. I hope you like it just as much as I do. Stay tuned for the next one. It'll be a really cool block, and it's one that I designed, so it's a unique one. All right. Again, thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay tuned for the next one. And when we get to the final one, which I will announce later, I'm going to show you how we're all going to pull it together with a center star medallion and to make a quilt. All right? Happy quilting, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like what I'm doing, and support me, please. And you can find me on social media, as in Facebook. It's Nancy McNally Quilt. I have a private Facebook group. It is private so that no crazy people get in there. And it is called So Anyways with Nancy McNally. I am on Instagram. It's @McNallyNancy. And I do have a Pinterest page, Nancy McNally Quilts. All right, everybody. It's time to go make dinner. I know. You're probably watching this early in the morning or something thinking, what? Yes, it is Labor Day when I filmed this. And it's time to go do something for dinner. And I also have to get a quilt off the long arm. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.